Orlando, we're seeing those cloudy conditions right now as we have that initial band that just moved through the Orlando area. And that actually gave a little bit of rainfall, which is why you see some of these little drops here, these residual drops on the camera lens. They're right there. Kind of looks like it's along the interstate there, but it did rain a few hours ago here in Orlando. And you can kind of see that with that radar here. So if we zoom back up towards the Orlando area, just near Seminole County, right, yeah, there, that's good. So Daytona Beach right now currently have a tropical downpour that kind of extends down the coast along US Route 1, just off into the Atlantic Ocean, off the about Cape Canaveral area, where this squall line just came through and gave that tropical downpour, that really strong showers here as it kind of moves around the center of Idalia. That also kind of goes back towards Pearson and Volusia County, and then over into Sumter and Lake County here. Or I should say Alachua County. We're near Ocala and Marion County as well. So going over towards the west, so we'll go over towards Ocala there, just to kind of see if there's anything going on. So we do see a few heavier showers possibly along Interstate 75 and going towards US 41, just north of Citrus County, north of Hernando County, and off towards the west, southwest roughly of Ocala. And these are all, again, moving kind of to the north here around the center of circulation of Idalia. Kind of going along the coast here near Citrus County. Again, we have those light showers. If you go down to US Route 919, I should say, we should expect to see more of a kind of a clearing, at least for Hernando, Pasco, and Hillsborough counties around the Tampa Bay area, where we just seen this squall line that did move through earlier across west central Florida. And the way a lot of these tropical systems work is you normally tend to see these very intense squalls come through and then a break. Another intense squall comes through. That's kind of how these tropical systems operate, at least around the fringes of it, as we'll see band after band after band come on shore overnight tonight. So, and the other thing too is a lot of these times these shower squalls can actually produce some pretty severe winds too. In some cases may even rotate and as such could even produce a tornado or two as they kind of pivot around the center of circulation. And again, you want to make sure you keep those alerts on because like we all mentioned here earlier, it is not just a hurricane event, it is also a tornado event and a storm surge event. So you want to make sure you kind of keep your alerts on, stay up to date with the National Weather Service and of course your local emergency management, and here on FSU Weather as well, as we'll be covering Idalia all the way through landfall tomorrow morning. So it'll definitely be a long night tonight for many folks here along the Big Bend of Florida, but we'll keep you through here. We'll keep you covered here. So we keep going down to the south here towards Sarasota County. For the most part, clear through Hillsborough, but into Sarasota County, we have those light showers kind of brushing up along the coast, so along US 41 and 75 before the bend here near Venice. Port Charlotte also kind of seeing some light showers, and then little pockets of perhaps some moderate showers just in Lee County and into Charlotte County here. And that's kind of the continuation of the whole story as we go on throughout the next several hours or so, with occasionally a few of those stronger showers making their way inland. And again, like places like La Belle, over towards DeSoto, and into inland portions of South Central Florida is where we have potentially those showers may exist right now. And Lake Okeechobee in particular, near Belgrade, or Belglade I should say, and along US 441, all the way to West Palm Beach has perhaps that more stronger, more moderate rainfall rates occurring with this particular squall, which looks like it's kind of degrading a little bit, but let in mind, again, it is still pretty, a little bit stronger, especially as you make your way towards Jupiter, West Palm, and down near Boca Raton. So we'll continue our journey southward towards the southern tip of Florida just to kind of see what's going on. We have that kind of a little cell offshore here near Miami, which actually was severe warned here shortly, not too long ago, but that has since moved offshore, and we're left with some light to moderate rain around the Miami metro area. So Biscayne Bay, over Miami Beach and upwards to near Fort Lauderdale, where we have those light shower amounts, and then some light showers amounts also as you get down towards here near the Miami radar here and along US Route 1 as you go down towards the Keys. So we'll kind of track down actually US Route 1 down through the Keys here. So Homestead, also seeing that light to moderate rainfall occurring over the area. North Key Largo and Key Largo, the upper Keys here, also kind of the same story. We have that perhaps light to maybe moderate rain showers going through, all moving quickly to the north here. And then as we kind of make our way down towards Marathon and over into Isla Morada. That's where we have that kind of showers and storms kind of moving through, but those look like they're continuing off to the north. Key West looks like there might be a few showers off to the southern part of the radar that might make its way onto the Key. But again, we'll have to watch out over the next several hours as we'll see continuous just squalls moving through the area. And even though, if we zoom out a bit further, kind of showing the whole state and Idalia here, just because Key West is not at all near the center of circulation, we're still seeing those impacts from it in terms of squally weather, perhaps a little bit of rising water there. Not nearly to the extent as we're going to see Tampa northward, but again, still pretty much of a concern. And we'll actually kind of go towards the Big Bend right now just to kind of show what it's looking like outside of our doors here at Florida State in Tallahassee. We're staying pretty dry as of right now. Perhaps a few showers kind of going around 75. These are actually racing not to the north but to the west as we are on the northern side of that eye. But for at least over the Tallahassee metro area, we're kind of staying pretty dry as we had those showers near Alligator Point, light shower there near Alligator Point, and then these little clusters of cells kind of offshore. Besides that, we're pretty much staying pretty dry here. If we kind of go continue our trip west on I-10 near Panama City, for the most part, we're also staying dry here as they actually had a few showers not too long ago as well moving through. However, not associated directly with Idalia, but just kind of ahead of the line or ahead of the storm here. And we'll go towards the very western tip of the state here near Pensacola. We should kind of a similar story where we're staying pretty dry up across much of the area. But we're going to send things over to the wall with Priscilla with an update on our models.
Yes, thank you, Aaron. Now, taking a look at our models, we've seen the National Hurricane Center post their models, which are slightly in more accordance with the European model. But there are some differences between the European model and the GFS model, which is the American model. So we're going to take a quick look at those right now. So right now I have up the American GFS model, and we're going to just take a quick look at this continuation. And as you can see, it's moving very through Tallahassee and the Big Bend region, slightly closer than the European model, which we'll look at in just a second. So things are moving very fast, and that pressure is very low, contributing to those strong hurricane conditions, which are going to power a lot of that storm surge we're going to see, as well as high winds and rainfall. So now taking a look at the European model, we're going to see this track as well, which is showing the grander development of Hurricane Idalia and as well moving into the Big Bend. And this one has actually shifted slightly westward, which is the agreement we're starting to see through many models and with many meteorologists today. And it's going to pick up through the eastern coast of Florida. And now taking a look over back at the National Hurricane Center, we're going to zoom in to our cone and kind of compare the two models and how they interact with the National Hurricane Center model. So as you can see, the cone is very much pushing throughout the Big Bend. Here in Tallahassee, our concern is right above this little bump in the state of Florida. But the problem with the cone, or something to think about with the cone, is we can still have hazardous conditions very well outside, and as well they're still adjusting the cone track and watching the center of the storm. But like I said, with the GFS model, things are pushing more westward, so we're going to see perhaps the center of the storm move more westward and bring lots of impacts into Tallahassee. Something I'm mainly concerned about is flash flooding within the city. If you've been on campus, we know, roads, sidewalks tend to flood a lot. We're going to have a lot of rain and a lot of wind in a short period of time, and that's going to really exacerbate these effects. So we're going to look at some more models and graphics from the National Hurricane Center. So this is our graphic for the earliest reasonable arrival time of tropical storm force winds. So this is the earliest reasonable. So if you're really like, okay, what's like the earliest we're going to see? But this is not the most likely. So potentially we're looking at around Wednesday, 2 a.m. We're going to see a lot of the impacts overnight. We're going to start feeling them soon, likely before slightly 2 a.m., as well as those rains, heavy rains, and winds before. But as for our most likely arrival time, it's pushing that a little bit further out, so we're going to see a lot of the effects. This one is predicting that we're going to see them between 2 and 8 a.m., potentially around 3 or 4. But again, we'll be having rains much before then, and we've already had lots of rain today, lots of wind. Things are just going to pick up and really bring us through. So we're going to look at another graphic now. So our wind speed probabilities. So this has developed a lot since the last time I took a look. As we can see, these are our percentages for probability of tropical storm force winds. So we're seeing 90%, greater 100%. We are going to experience tropical storm force, hurricane force winds throughout almost the entirety of Florida. Straight through Big Bend, Jacksonville, Tallahassee, we're all at risk. You can even see the convergence with Hurricane Franklin over in the Atlantic. Lots of heavy winds and such that are going to be impacting our areas. Something to think about is if you live near a lot of trees, you have a lot of trees in your area, make sure to move your car as soon as you can, because those trees, branches are going to come down, things are going to move a lot. You're going to see trees swaying back and forth very heavily. It's very intense and dangerous. Make sure to not go outside during these intense winds as well. So now we're going to take a quick look at the rainfall. And again, this has also shifted since the last time I have taken a look. And right now, Tallahassee is experiencing a lot of rainfall in the 6 to 10 inches range. So we're going to be experiencing a lot of rainfall and flooding. Again, now let's take a look at our flooding potential, which you'll see Tallahassee right in the middle of it. Boom, right through the Big Bend. We're going to have a lot of inland flooding. Of course, storm surge is another big concern of ours, but with that flash flooding, that's where we'll have those inland effects. So now we're going to send it over to Josh on the wall.
Thanks, Priscilla. So as we did earlier, we're going to go back and take a look at our radar again to see any changes. We're back overlooking at Orlando right now, my hometown, overlooking I-4. It's definitely starting to look right now very clear and starting to ease up on traffic. That's good. More people are off the roads. That makes it good so that way no one's trying to outride the storm or even just try doing anything dangerous, as we know I-4 can be very, very treacherous. So looking at live, let's go up to Volusia County, which will be right up here. I want to take a look on some of the heavier rainfall up near Daytona Beach. Almost. So we have some heavier rainfall up in Deltona, but also going up to the I-4 corridor to Daytona Beach and going up to I-95 as well. It's starting to clear up, but again, you need to make sure that you keep that in mind. This is not going to be over by any means. The rain still is going to be coming in and out. While we're on the outer bands will have more sporadic squall lines, essentially, where you'll have periods of strong rain, but then you'll have periods of clarity in terms of the weather. So that's something you would want to keep an eye on. So let's also go back west towards Tampa Bay. And as we see, the rain that was here earlier this afternoon has started to clear out. But we do want to keep in mind we're also on the western edge of the inner part of the storm. So actually, let's zoom out a bit. We're on the outer edge of the storm, and so we could see some rain coming up and go into Tampa. So if you're going to be in that area, you're not out of the woods just yet, and you're nowhere out of the woods, but it's starting to get better. So that's something you got to keep in mind as the storm is going to pass through. So if you're near the beach, such as St. Pete, Clearwater, going down to Sarasota, make sure you stay off the coast and just get away from the beach overall. Let's go down to Bradenton and Venice. As we're starting to see some rain, it's starting to pick in or to head on in towards the coast. It's light at the moment, but as we see off the coast over here, we have some some heavy bands coming through. So it's one thing, that rain could be heading towards Boca Ciega or Ruskin, and so if you're in those areas, that's something you need to keep an eye on at the current moment. I also want to go back towards South Florida, specifically Miami-Dade, and actually no, not Miami-Dade, Broward and Palm Beach. So over here, there was rain earlier, but it has since cleared out from both southern Miami going down into West Palm. If we go up just north into Martin County, we're still seeing some rain off the coast of between Port St. Lucie and Jupiter that's still present, but is moving off the shore relatively quickly. Let's bring it back home to the Big Bend area, because that's not only where we are, but that's also where the storm is expected to come in, especially towards, as we see in Tallahassee, we did have some rain, very light drops, but nothing super severe. However, we do, as we go eastward, and we'll start to see some rain just north of Gainesville in Alachua County. So that's something to be on the lookout for. As the rain will start to continue coming in, as the inner bands start to come in, especially towards Tallahassee, Big Bend area, the rain is just going to get more and more constant. It's not going to be as sporadic as we've been seeing in central and southeast Florida. That's one thing you have to make sure you keep aware. And as we mentioned, it's not going to be a good idea to go outside. So get inside, and get prepared to bunker down. So we'll start taking back over for an overall review.
That's right. Josh kind of laid it out pretty clearly what's going on here across much of the area. We have, of course, Idalia that's creating a lot of an issue here across the Big Bend. And we kind of look towards our radar here. We can kind of see where we have that blowup of convection right around the northern periphery of the storm, and that indicates a strengthening storm, a storm that will be continuously gaining strength unfortunately as it makes its way towards the Big Bend. I do also want to mention too that if you have any questions about the storm structure or what the forecast is, please feel free to leave it in the chat room, at least on this live stream, and we'll go ahead and try to answer it in the next segment here. But for the most part, we have that flare-up of convection around the eye that indicates very strong updrafts that are occurring, those white, cold cloud tops around the center of the system there. So satellite view does show, again, that center of circulation occurring around Idalia here over the next several hours or so. But again, the cone of uncertainty does show where we have that center of circulation here. It is currently located at 26.1 north and 84.8 west there. Winds are currently moving, or at 100 miles an hour, moving north at 16 miles an hour, and pressure down at 972 millibars. So it is still strengthening. That cone's still kind of just a little bit off to the east, and mostly actually kind of off to the east with some of the ensemble models from the GFS and the European models. But really up until landfall, we're not going to know the exact point, because the storm, with any tugs of the thunderstorms, of course, we can have wobbles left or right of where the eventual track may end up going to, as we have, again, the risk of landfall there across the Big Bend.
We're definitely going to want to keep attention to this storm as we move closer into the overnight hours as the storm approaches the Big Bend. We're taking a look now at Cedar Key, which is one of the areas that the storm could actually make landfall. And Cedar Key has a mandatory evacuation in place already. 98% of residents have so far evacuated, and only about 700 people live in Cedar Key. But if you're still remaining in Cedar Key, you definitely want to heed those warnings. Notice like how quiet the roads are, how just kind of braced for impact the Cedar Key area is. Taking a look at the satellite vapor imagery, and let's take a look right in here. We can see that Idalia is trying to form an eye. All right, and as we go through the next few hours, as Idalia tries to strengthen, we're really going to notice that as it strengthens, that eye is going to start to form. And look at radar. We're seeing it kind of spinning around itself. That's indicative of it trying to form an eye. And as it does, that just indicates that the storm is strengthening. Idalia now Category 2. And like we mentioned, we're seeing these storms start to move through Broward, Miami-Dade, and then up into central Florida as well, as some of the outer bands start to work their way also towards the Tampa area. So spaghetti models are getting more and more concise as we get closer to the overnight hours, and we're starting to really notice that it is kind of picking up on a Tallahassee area landfall, being like Jefferson County, Wakulla County, on over. That's kind of the idea that the latest spaghetti models have been hinting at. Maybe a couple of them will work over closer to Jefferson into Levi County, but for the most part, we're really going to be taking a close eye as Wakulla County, Jefferson County really are kind of the consensus of the computer models and the computer model guidance. And with that, the cone from the National Hurricane Center a little further to the east, but I want to keep in mind that this cone, it can go anywhere within this cone. It can go all the way from like near Tallahassee to near like Levi County landfall. And so even though we are a few hours out, we're still going to be keeping an eye on this Idalia, as it's now a Category 2 hurricane, and it's only going to intensify as we approach landfall, because as Idalia starts to make its turn towards Florida, it is expected to become a Category 3 hurricane in the next few hours. And again, just keeping an eye on keeping our, what's going on, what are we doing. Idalia was the Category 1 hurricane this morning, is now intensified to a Category 2 hurricane with winds between 96 and 110 miles an hour. And just notice with this house here behind me what's happening in Category 2 damage. Then let's add on Category 3, which is what the forecast is for Idalia to make landfall as. We're going to be looking at coastal flooding, definitely the risk for storm surge, widespread power outages, and then if Idalia is somehow able to strengthen, which I wouldn't rule out, because of that warm water, we'd be looking at possibly a Category 4 hurricane. I don't think we'll be looking at a Category 5 hurricane, but again, Idalia is expected to strengthen as we go through the next couple hours. So storm surge-wise, we've got a normal sea level, and I want to keep in mind, too, that we are at a full moon, so the waves are going to be a little bit higher than normal, and then we're going to be adding on the ocean surge, and with the wind, we could be seeing up to 3, 6, 12 feet of storm surge, 12 feet, enough to cover like one story of your home in water, which is why when you see some hurricane, right after a storm, people are on the roofs. So pre-storm, let's get those NHC updates, NWS. We're running out of time to get our essentials and get our documents and phones charged, so let's do that now. And then let's stay aware for emergency alerts, take refuge as we head into the overnight hours tonight, and prepare for landfall of Idalia. I'm going to pass it over to Josh for more on Idalia.
So just to finish up, post-storm advice, pay attention to local officials. Don't try to go out and go explore, because you'll be down trees, down power lines, a bunch of hazards. And make sure you save your phone calls and electronics for emergencies only, and to document damage. So as we move on to more information about Idalia, we have our GFS forecasted wind speed. So we are seeing that right now, tomorrow around 11 is supposed to come in really strong, especially in Tallahassee. So you're going to definitely want to make sure you're in shelter and you're in place, if not already. So as we go into our current watches and warnings, Tallahassee is very much under a hurricane warning, which spans all the way down the Gulf Coast, as well as into parts of Georgia, because of how much strength that Idalia has. It's going to still be going through, even though into southern Georgia, even if not as a major hurricane, as it's still a pretty good Category 1 or Category 2 hurricane. We also have tropical storm warnings across the East Coast, so that's something you have to also keep in mind as well as down south in the southwestern part of Florida, even though they just got through the brunt of it. So as we move on to our forecasted wind speeds, we're actually going to be expecting the strongest winds to be coming through around before 11 a.m. tomorrow. So it's one thing to make sure you keep in mind. Then also, you'll start seeing them come through Thursday afternoon, and it'll clear out for the most part by then. So as we see the Euro model, you'll still see the strong winds coming through Tallahassee, all to the east of it. But regardless of where the strongest winds are coming, one thing you have to keep in mind is that they're not going to be going down. It's still going to be very dangerous as they're trying to go up against very strong winds that could be into the 26 to 40 mile-hour range. And while that may just seem like a typical thunderstorm, it's going to be much stronger with the amount of rain, amount of wind that's not going to be letting up. So, and you also see that it will still continue through and clear out by Thursday. So we will be in the clear after Wednesday. Now, with the flood potential, today we just saw it mostly around the coast, and we saw some flood that's probably unrelated in Georgia, but also we saw some slight flood potential going from inland Tallahassee towards the Gulf Coast, towards Tampa. But as we go to tomorrow, that moderate risk expands towards Tallahassee, going through central Georgia, up to Columbia, and down to southern North Carolina. And that's basically essentially outlining the path that Idalia is going to follow. So, as you expect to see your rainfall forecast, a bunch of the rain, especially through the GFS model, is expecting to show it through Tallahassee and going up into southern central Georgia, meaning that we have the greatest flood risk for sure because of the enhanced rain. And with our Euro model, we're actually going to be also seeing that same deal, which both of them support that rain will definitely be a major player in Idalia on Tallahassee. So it's one thing to consider. You don't want to try to go outside, because in the next 48 hours we're expecting at least 5 to 7 inches of rain in areas. You don't want to try to outdrive and try to escape. Again, if you try to and you see standing water, turn around, don't drown. So as we go through, you're just going to want to make sure that you follow the storm surge warnings. Make sure you get off the coast if you're not already. And overall, just make sure you stay alert, stay informed, and stay safe. We'll be back at 8 o'clock.